New problem. I'm going to clear my workspace, clear my command window, open up a new script file. Look at my document. Write a function a equals double row triple column mn. Function a equals double row triple column m comma n. End. Start there. Save it. Okay, now I can see what it does. So it takes in two integers m and n and creates an array a of size m by n, where each element of a will be 2 times the row number plus 3 times the column number. So I'm going to start out with a being zeros. Zeros m comma n. I'm going to iterate through this array, go through all the rows, go through all the columns, and fill in my numbers. So there's a couple ways to do this once again. There's lots of ways to do these things. I'm going to do it with a nested for loop first. So for I equals 1 to m, so go through the number of rows. For j equals 1 to n, so go through the number of columns. And then I'm going to say a of I comma j is equal to 2 times my row number, which is I, plus 3 times my column number, which is j. So it's going to put in one number at a time. I'm going to test it. A equals double row, triple column. Let's do a 2 by 3. Start with something simple. So this should be 2 times 1 plus 3 times 1, which is 5. 2 times 1 plus 3 times 2, which is 8, etc. So it's doing what I expect it to do. This is about as straightforward, I guess, as you can think about things in terms of using nested loops, saying what is each element. So row column equals 2 times the row number plus 3 times the column number. This is one way to do it. You could also do it where you have, so a equals zeros m comma n. You could also just iterate through the rows, where you have a second array, columns, that identifies 1 to n. So here's all of your column numbers. And you are essentially going to fill in each column at a time. So you could say a row up, no. I'm gonna think about this. Yep, so row I, all of your columns is going to be, okay, you're filling in each row at a time. So it's going to be 2 times 1 plus, or 2 times I, 2 times your column number, plus 3 times C. Element by element operations. You could have the period here. You do not need it because it's a scalar, but you fill them in one at a time. So let's test this. And we can see, so we can see A starts out as zeros. So I didn't leave the semicolon off there. So it starts out at zeros and then it fills in this first row. So 2 times 1 plus 3 times 1, 2, 3. And then it fills in the second row. Okay, so this is one way to do it. You could also say for I equals 1 to n. So go through the number of rows. Go through the number of columns. So you would have a rows vector that is 1 to n, or all the row numbers, or row indices, really. And then same idea. A, all rows, whichever column, is going to be 2 times r plus 3 times j, and 3 times I. And this would do more or less the same thing. So start out with A as zeros. And we can see it filled in one at a time. So it starts at 0, it fills in this first row, then the second row, then the third row. Any of these works. You could also technically do it without any of those options. This one's a little more tricky because it does some MATLAB magic in the background, but it would essentially be A equals 2 times, so you would have 2 vectors, one with your row numbers, 1 to m, one with your column numbers, 1 to n. And then I think your rows would need to be transposed. Let's try this. Your rows would be transposed, so it's literally the rows. So you would do 2 times rows plus 3 times columns. So let's see what this does. There you go. So it does the same thing. So it's doing 2 times a row vector plus 3 times a column vector, and it just does some MATLAB magic behind the scenes and just takes that row, that column, and adds it to each number in the row vector. Now, so here there's 4 ways to do this problem. Once again, unless you are told to do a specific way, do whichever one makes sense. This one is the most straightforward. There's the least amount of array manipulation to deal with. These two are pretty similar, just making sure you're indexing each row or column to fill in one at a time, and you need this extra vector that contains your column indices or your row indices. And this one's much fancier. And to be honest, this one's a little bit harder for students to comprehend because it is so different, a different way of thinking about things. This is very much MATLAB special. Like other languages wouldn't do this. Okay, so there's 4 options to do this problem.